I don't have a lot of
Don't have a lot of notes.
notes for midweek.
Oh,
I've got a
fantastic.
fair
Okay.
amount from the first half, a lot less for the second.
Yeah, that's usually how it works.
I know,
Which is
run out of steam. Just like, I mean, basically,
we-
like, I'm sure. Oh, fuck, there's another half of this, isn't there? Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host, well, in reference to this weekend's opposing manager, Neil Warnock, being best known by his acronym, Colin Wanker. He's normally known as Luke Gledall, but today will be a geek lad lol. How are you doing today, a geek lad lol?
Good. Oh, good. Could you just explain like what that? I mean, Colin Wanker is pretty kind of self-explanatory. But what is a geek lad lol? What is it?
I think it's equally self-explanatory. A geek lad having a break. I think really. If you put both of our names together, you could end up with Armchair Dullard and Illegal Elk. So maybe that's a preferable sort of duo.
Armchair Dullard and Illegal Elk.
Yeah.
I like it. Should Armchair Dullard and Illegal Elk get onto the break and hoo-hoos?
You know, it's a good suggestion, I think.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
So the first thing really doesn't relate to Sheffield Wednesday in a direct sense, but between the two episodes, the footballing world has been shooken to its core.
Consider it shooken, that footballing world.
Consider it shooken to its very foundations. So football was saved by a group of heroic clubs putting forward a very selfless plan to remove themselves from any competition, and then it all collapsed within a space of a few days. So I'm alluding to this, the European Super League, as it was called. What I mean, it's very funny that it's burnt itself out so quickly. Although, if you believe the Real Madrid chairman, it's just sort of waiting for its time as an idea. But what did you make of the announcement and the backlash and all the rest of it? What was your sort of feeling on it?
I generally felt that when this thing came up, I was a bit like, I don't really care. I think it's just further endemic to football swallowing itself, and capitalism just has already ruined it to a certain degree. So it's just further down the rabbit hole. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. I guess the interesting thing with this is, like, I didn't, because it's seemingly, as it stands right now, not happening. I'm really curious to see if it would happen, then what would happen to the Champions League? What would be the knock-on effects if that would happen, which is already, it's so early days that no one can really say or kind of announce this stuff. But I don't know. I mean, the Champions League is expanding anyway. You know,
yes,
Jurgen Klopp is having a bit of a moan about it, which is something that he does. Something that typically you get with Jurgen Klopp is moaning to the press about things being seemingly gratefully unfair.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't know. I really don't care. I'm not so kind of outraged. It's so far removed from everything I know about Sheffield Wednesday and football. Because I think that's the thing. I think we all think about the nature of football being in relation to where our football club is. You believe in like an ideology that's much like a game of Championship Manager 93 or your football managers, if you will. That we could lead the new Saints to Champions League glory.
yes.
Or we can get Barnet challenging for Europe. You know, which theoretically it is possible. I mean, But over like all of this, the only thing I think it really plays off is the ideology of the mentality that football should be competitive and that it should be an earned thing. How you get the chance to earn that. The thing that frustrates me is like we don't go back the point before and say, how are these clubs having their financial dominance? They have financial dominance because they have insanely wealthy owners. But there's a lot to also be said about the setup of English football and the rules that kind of govern that, which keep the hoi polloi in place.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that still kind of frustrates me, but that's still kind of like, this is the mentality of a Sheffield Wednesday fan should be a second to first tier club in standing heritage in lots of ways that we go down the list and tick off the boxes. But still, we're looking to enter the third tier of English football for the fourth time in our history. And it's just an incredibly long way away from this. I did really enjoy, as a great tweet, we can probably put this in the notes as well, the brilliant tweet, which was Tottenham Hotspur at the meeting for European Super League meeting. And it's the meme of Big Bird sitting amongst a bunch of suits, which I did really, really enjoy. So...
Well, that was the weird thing. So it just felt so amateurish and rushed. So, I mean, one of the takes is that this was just a bit of a power play so that they could have their say on the Champions League. So one of the things they're talking about in the Champions League is, I think, 2 spaces or maybe more, essentially for teams that are historically from good leagues and do well in the European Cups. So effectively, even if you don't qualify, if you've got a bit of a safety net, because you could be one of those 2 teams that doesn't qualify through your league play, but you come from a good league and you've done well in Europe previously, so you get a space. So the Champions League was building to have something that's almost, partially this European Super League anyway, and including thing that people most seem to be annoyed about, which was that sort of anti-competitive streak to it. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. But I think that was the thing looking at it was just particularly this season, as much as any, where these super teams have looked more fallible than ever before. The choice of teams seemed very odd. I mean, Tottenham... pretty much like they have a cup and league winning record very similar to our own, in that a long time ago there was quite a bit of success. We're talking 100 years and more. There was a bit of a blip around the 90s and the 60s maybe, and that's kind of it in terms of the major bits and pieces. And this season, rubbish under Mourinho. Lost lots of games from being ahead and things like that. Liverpool have been had one of the worst sort of follow-ups to a championship winning season in recent.
The worst title defence on record.
Yeah. So it's just very strange when actually 2 of those teams aren't even qualifying. It's not like, oh, it's boring, those 6 teams get in all the time. 2 of those teams might well not qualify for Europe this season, which I guess is why they want to do it, but it's also speaks to the fact that it shouldn't happen. I like that the players were the main reason I think this fell down. I know that they talked about fans. I don't think they care about fans. Football has survived for 2 years almost, 18 months without fans. I think fans have never been less important to these big clubs and their owners. But
do you think, I've been thinking, this is probably slightly kind of changed, but speaking about the fans, do you think we're in, a really interesting kind of world and age right now with a lot of things? I was thinking about this, that I think I told you I give money to Princess Superstar's Patreon because I thought that would be fun to support her. And I was off work yesterday, so I managed to hop on to a Zoom call with some of the other fans, and it was very small and very intimate. And it's really interesting to live in an age where you have such kind of ready digital access to people.
Yeah.
But it made me wonder a lot because I saw that thing about, I think it was a thing that was going around. I think it might have been Bayer Leverkusen or a club of this ilk. And
Okay.
basically, as the Germans are very, very passionate about their football clubs, so they kind of united, socially distanced at a space outside the ground to kind of applaud the players, to have their claps travel into the stadium.
Mm.
And it's really interesting to me because, like, there's such a weird... Me and you have been there. I've been there. I think I've probably been the more awkward of the two of us. We've Sheffield Wednesday players, and there's a really awkward kind of relationship between fans and the players.
Yeah.
Like as though there's some kind of unwritten agreement that they are kind of servants to us.
Yes.
And we are also kind of servants to them in a degree of idolatry.
Yes.
And
it's interesting. Yeah.
It's just a really interesting thing to bring up when you talk about the relationship to football to its fans. Like I don't think we've ever been... I think it's naturally quite weird, and I think it's getting weird coming into a world where social media is just rife and mutates and grows every second, let alone every season. But fans have just been so far removed in this pandemic from football, literally and physically and metaphorically as well.
Just look, it's this rushed announcement on a Sunday night. They don't tell managers, they don't brief players. So it was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who looks befuddled at the best of times. He was having to be the public face of this thing that was being met with a barrage of hatred and rage. And he was legitimately just sort of holding his hands up and sort of saying, I've no idea what's going on, really. I've been told almost as much as you.
He went from baby-faced assassin to stroke-riddled baby, you're saying, right?
Exactly. He looked like, when you see those videos of babies having a lemon or ice cream for the first time.
Yeah.
That's the look of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on a Sunday night. But so supposedly behind the scenes, the Man United players were completely bemused by this, and I don't think any of them presented for interview afterwards. And then it was like a scramble to try and speak to them before they spoke to the press, and that did not go down well. We then had Jordan Henderson brought out an official statement. James Milner, I think, was on TV the next day and sort of said, well, I don't like it. I don't want it to happen. And I think that, as much as anything, was the players. The players do still hold a lot of sway, I think, at these clubs, and the managers, big name managers.
Do you?
Sorry, go on.
No, you carry on.
Well, no, but I think the fact that Klopp seemed to be angered by the very suggestion, and Pep Guardiola as well. Guardiola in particular is such a part of the identity that City are trying to build that I think him not being on board was probably the death knell to it from their side of things.
To link up that previous topic, what I was talking about with this one, do you think it's more the outrage on social media that's kind of had more kind of sway with us?
They had to have known that was going to happen. I think the whole idea is abhorrent to fans because they had to know. It's not so long ago that we had the 39th game idea, and this is like a whole season of the 39th game, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. So
they must have. I think by the time they're announcing it, by the time they're having the discussions, they don't care about fans. They don't care about fans in Liverpool and Manchester, blah, blah, blah. What they care about is fans in the Middle East and Asia and America.
Of course.
They do not care about fans who are local to the club. I think that's all a given.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have known there would have been a backlash. I think maybe what they didn't predict and what they failed to brief in time they needed to have internal buy-in. You need to have the players on board, the manager on board. You can't have everything under you. It's every single stakeholder other than the greedy owners were against this idea, and that's why it all fell down.
So you think that what they should have done is gone to these people and been like, "Hey guys, if we're going ahead and doing this, you're going to get a few more big old sacks of cash."
Well, that's probably what it would have been, wouldn't it? Delicious cash.
Moneybags, the character from Spyro the Dragon, who is a monocled, topped and tailed bear with a little sack of cash. They'd be like, "Here you go. Here you go, Marcus Rashford. We know you have morals, but can we give you how much does morals cost? Is it 30 doubloons? Is it 40 doubloons?"
And there's no, and it was such a weird thing that there's like, well, there's 15 founding clubs, but here's 12 of them. So there's 3 that couldn't even, didn't even want to stick their neck out to make the announcement, but supposedly had signed up or had shown interest. There's not one club from Germany. There's not one club from France. There's no representation of the Dutch leagues, which, if you're looking at history within the European game, I know like currently Dutch leagues are pretty low ebb, but like Ajax are one of the powerhouses of European football. It's just so weird and short-sighted, and it's just such a bizarre thing.
I just imagine Rich turning on, like having a strop fit because his beloved VVV Venlo is not involved.
Where's PSV Eindhoven? That's what I'm saying. Gerald Sabon needs the big stage. Yeah, so I'm almost. It was such a bad launch that I'm almost sort of to the point of feeling like there might be some sort of conspiracy theory that it's like what Facebook does, where they go, "Do you know what? We're gonna put all of your data on our website so everybody can see it," and then everyone goes, "Not all of our data on your website so everybody can see it," and then they go, "Okay, some of your data on our website,
yes,
so some people can see it." I'm like, okay, I'm less annoyed about that.
And this is seemingly a great triumph to what we do.
Yeah, exactly. Did any part of you feel like this might be a way to escape relegation? If these 6 clubs were banned from the Premier League, maybe everybody moves up some spaces.
That'd be fun.
Of all the ways to escape the trapdoor at the bottom of the table, that would have been a really novel one. Okay. Well, the other thing that happened midweek was a win for Sheffield Wednesday. Can you believe it?
The lesser spotted win.
The lesser spotted win. Back on the red button, which is, I think, I would have said before today's experience for me, which I will take you through nearer the time. I would have said the worst experience in terms of watching the football this season, because you have one very dull commentator. I think his name was actually Guy Middlingman is maybe his name. Just a generic, I've done some football commentary, here I am on my own. I'm not that interested. I'm not going to get that excited. I'm not going to, there's just going to be very little change in my intonation. I'm going to go from about a 5 to a 7, and that's about it. That's all you're getting. I've been contracted for this, and they didn't pay for excitement. And also the stream has varying quality to the point where it really looks like it's been filmed on a sort of Nokia 310 or something like that from back in, or whatever, back in the day. And then the other thing is no replays at all of anything. So it's a real treat to watch on the red button, and that's the one we had. We sort of drafted Rhodes back in, and I think, was Harris a reintroduction for this game as well?
I believe so, yes.
I don't know whether I was just in a bad mood and I brought that to the game, but my first sort of spattering of notes are pretty bad. So I've got low tempo, low effort, poor quality game, and then the next one was I didn't think Oblivion would be so boring. Then my next note is the fact that we scored. Do you have more to fill things out than that, Luke?
I'm kind of going back over my notes and our kind of maybe more of our conversation that me and you had on that day. It was like you seem very damning of this, but I'm gonna say like
I was quite. I think I was just a grumpy Gus.
Well, grumpy Gus, let me remind you what I reminded you of a text then. It's still like schools ahead of some of the games we played this season.
Yes, I think that's the overall. I would say even this weekend's game, there's a positivity to the way we play, which is a welcome change from what we've been used to. Unfortunately, I don't know why this cannot be the plan, but how many chances fall to Liam Palmer in this current setup? He has chances on goal every single game, and he's really rubbish at shooting. Really, really rubbish, despite being quite competent at everything else in his game. Because he had a few efforts midweek. He had an effort or two today as well. No, I think you're right. I think I was bringing a bit of negativity. As I say, it's not the most enjoyable way to watch the football because you really feel the lack of atmosphere when the commentator is not trying to bring any excitement or verve to his job. He is painting by numbers and putting in the bare minimum. In terms of, I've been given some notes. I will read through the notes. Oh, number 10. Yeah, I've got something about number 10 down here. Number 10 is Barry Bannan, and he is a Scottish footballer. There you go. Like that's the sort of level of joie de vivre that the commentator is bringing to proceedings. And the game, you're then looking for the game to elevate itself above that level. And for me, it didn't quite do that. But as I say, I think maybe I was bringing a bit of. I was expecting us to get relegated in the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lackluster midweek game, which midweek games are very, very lackluster and very kind of lacking any great conviction from Sheffield Wednesday for a lot of time. You know, the end of a season, which has just kind of ripped any enthusiasm out of pretty much everybody. You know, the true virus of his time is was all losing any enthusiasm for this football club. It just new and less interesting ways. But I mean, the nature of this is we can play positive, we can get forward and create chances. The ability to put away those chances, it's still a step up, like creating chances and not really scoring a great deal of them. That felt very it feels very endemic to Sheffield Wednesday under Moore right now. Really more kind of, we say, Jamie Smith at this point, Jamie Smith and Paul Williams within the situation. But I don't know, like it's still, like it's going to happen. We're going to have a situation where we play with any great lack of conviction, backbone, and all these kind of words I'm struggling to kind of find for what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that, but we're still going to manage to scrape a win every now and again. And we're going to have a situation where we're playing a team who are ensconced mid-table and nothing to play for, and they pretty much played with that same kind of conviction, and they nearly equalised. They very, very nearly they should have equalised, to be honest with you.
It's kind of an interesting combination because there seems to be differing sort of, reading back about the... So we scored in the 37th minute, which Harris sort of played the ball to Windass, and Windass sort of deflected it off an opposing defender's gooch, and that beat the goalkeeper. Tom Lees had a decent chance not long after there as well. But I think looking at it, reading reports and watching it, looking back at it afterwards, it's interesting on the highlights, which is the Sheffield Wednesday's own in-house commentary. our goal was described as being against the run of play. And that's maybe fair, because it looks like one of those games. They had sort of 60% possession, or 58 to be precise, but we had more shots. And I think that's what it felt like, was one of these games that actually we were doing pretty well on the break. And that tends to be our better performances. They have more possession. We look more dangerous. Those are the good performances. And then almost every game where we have more possession, or parity in terms of possession, we lose. That's sort of been the Wednesday feel for a long time, strangely, but it just continues, to this day. That said, I think Westwood had one of his better performances. He's looking back at sort of who scored, he picked up the best score of the game, from a Wednesday point of view. It's as I say, it's a sort of intriguing one, because I think they did have their chances. I think in particular, was it Buckley late on in the second half really, he just anywhere other than straight at the keeper, it's a goal, but he thankfully hit it straight down Westwood's throat. But other than that, not a distinctly uncomfortable evening against a team that have been very good going forward, but for most of the season. I know they've tailed off massively. They're one of these teams that's just sort of, I think they were up second or third at some point, and then they're lucky that they're not in relegation trouble come the end of the season. They've had a Monk-esque fall off in the second half of the season, but it's it keeps our chances alive and allows us to move along. Anything else that you want to sort of talk through in terms of that game?
No, like I said, just it's going to be the odds, the probability that we're going to keep playing this way, and we're going to eke out a win like that sporadically every now and again. It's not a win that you'd obviously look at and say that's bread and butter for Sheffield Wednesday, because it isn't.
Do you think, looking at the last 4 or 5 games, do you think maybe the difference is whether the defence makes a huge cock-up or not?
But that's been the thing like all season, Rich.
But I'm saying the games that we've won, we've avoided a self-inflicted, no-pressure howler. And then we know that this team completely goes to pot. When they go behind, the heads go down, and there's no... we've not even really come close to salvaging points after going behind. There's not been a...
Well, no, because that's now like kind of spoiling what we're going to talk about a bit later. But I was actually saying, like, when at 1-1, and I'm really at the point where I don't particularly, unfortunately, kind of care about doing any great kind of mockery of putting the mockers on something, But basically, as it stands, I think we've kind of known this, but I went to concretely look at the evidence, and now it's basically, for terms of teams' points after failing behind, Sheffield Wednesday have had 23 deficits this season, and have had 23 losses. So that looked like, for a second, it looked like when we equalised in this game, the game against Middlesbrough this weekend, which we'll go on to review in a second, it looked like that was going to be our first draw, which still doesn't take us off the bottom. Well, actually, funnily enough, the other team is Derby County, who have had 24 deficits, of which they've taken 2 draws.
Wow. Yeah. It is damning. It is damning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you combine that with, if we were like Steely, that's the other thing, is we quite often score first and then let teams catch us up as well. We've lost points from winning positions almost more than anybody else as well. But like, you could cope with, okay, when they concede first, they lose, as long as when they get the first goal, they always win. Like, you can kind of cope with, like, a team that's bad at home or bad away, but really, really good in the opposite sort of fixture, can cope with that. You can almost get to, I think there's been teams that have been in the playoffs where it's like, well, they're terrible away from home or they're terrible at home. But you can't have both. That's the thing, isn't it? You've got to be hard to beat once you score, or really good at getting back into games. You can't be rubbish at both those things and expect very much from your season. Do we want to move on to the Boro game?
Let's get carried away. Yeah.
I mean, it's with trepidation rather than excitement that we bring ourselves along to this game with Boro. I mean, we had the usual Neil Warnock, Colin build-up of, I'd love to relegate them. I feel really bad that we beat Rotherham, and I'd love to relegate Wednesday. He's a fun pantomime villain, isn't he?
He's fantastic at doing that. He really is.
Widow cranky. We gave a start to Green, which is the kind of most interesting thing, I think, ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Harris dropped for Green and Rhodes dropped for Patterson. Or Patterson, I don't know why I wanted to call him Pattinson. Robert Pattinson, we played up top there. We've gone for the 300-year-old Dracula approach, vampire approach. It's a change. We're changing things up. I had some real connection issues today. I don't know whether it's the fact that Chester is a busy city on a sunny day, so there was lots of draw on the mobile internet that I need to rely on. I don't know, but it was pretty much unwatchable for the first 10 minutes. So there were two things they talked about that I didn't get at the time. So there was a Lee's mistake and a Bannon shot that they talked about that I didn't get to see.
I don't recall the Bannon shot. I recall Lee slipping over, though, don't I, Rich?
Oh.
Almost like I was waiting for it to happen. Like I'm taking some great, delicious enjoyment from how terrible he's doing. Yeah, he slipped and then he saved himself. He did actually, to be fair, make a recovering touch.
He made the mistake and fixed the mistake.
Yeah, which is more than some people do. Let's be honest, for Sheffield Wednesday. So had that touch. It basically kind of then went into Balassi. Balassi maybe firing a warning shot as he went in on and then struck wide on the angle.
Yeah. So we had, just to add to Neil Warnock enjoying, lapping up the Schadenfreude of us in a poor position. We also had the wonderful Giddy Aidings on the commentary, and very early doors. just made me glad that normally we get our own commentators, but very early doors. Don't worry, folks. We'll keep you up to date with all the goings on at Donny and Chesney. Oh, do we have to?
Yeah.
Does that even the people at Chesney don't really care about Chesney? Most of them at this stage, surely. So the first note really I have for Wednesday is Bannon plays a simple drifted ball to Borna, who balletically swivels, thinking he had all the time in the world, and hands possession to the waiting Balassi. Balassi can run, so Borna has no chance of catching him as he runs to the edge of the 6-yard box, and his shot deflects into the top corner at the far post. Crushing.
Yep.
Predictable.
Mm-hmm. Sick.
Completely unnecessary.
Check.
And, just with a vague hint that even after the mistake, probably the defending could have been better as well.
Mm-hmm.
The angle wasn't closed for him. Nobody got to him.
Mm-hmm.
The block was weak. I couldn't really figure out what the deflection did. Did it sort of like squeeze it down against the floor so that it sort of bounced up higher than expected? Anyway, it was enough to beat Westwood, who was well placed, although again he could have come out and potentially narrowed an angle in a different situation. Heartbreaking. We were then given the news that Derby had gone ahead, so we were relegated for a period of time during this game. One particular highlight for me, it unfortunately didn't result in a goal in the end, but 28 minutes or thereabouts. Reach, often accused of bottling tackles, just threw himself into, like, good and hard into a tackle that he knew he was going to get fouled in, and won a free kick on the sort of maybe 25 yards from the goal. I was surprised it was Reach watching it back, but he knew he was going to take the contact, and he put himself in there to get hit and win us the free kick. That produced a scramble that there must have been 3 or 4 different opportunities to shoot on goal that were just blocked or scuffed. And then we had a penalty. It was a penalty shout after they went out for a corner, and from that corner there was a penalty shout for Borna, but there didn't look to be much in it. It was a very spirited shout for a penalty, but I didn't really see any contact on Borna that didn't look like a foul to me. Did you agree?
Yeah, I thought it was more Burner messing up that shot, to be honest with you.
Yeah. He's another one that, we talked about Palmer getting chances every game. Burner gets chances every game at the moment as well. Set pieces fall to him with great regularity.
Yeah, he's very much Julian Spurner at the moment, isn't he?
Julian Spurner. Yeah, it's if he could show a bit of composure, we would. We're making chances. It's the good thing and the bad thing. It would be more frustrating to not make the chances, but it's really, really frustrating to make the chances and miss them and feel that destiny's in your own hands and not take it. So the 31st minute, we had another self-inflicted scare as Windass rushed a short free kick to sort of at the referee, but he was aiming for Bannon. It wasn't hit hard enough to get to Bannon, and it was cut out.
I think he was generous. I don't know what he was thinking in that situation.
I think he thought he would hit it off the referee and moan at the ref. I genuinely think that was the idea. I don't know why, but I think he was just annoyed that the ref was stood where he was looking and not reacting. But then the ref did react and move out of the way. So he was left to look very foolish. Yes. And we were very lucky not to concede from that, because they sort of charged up their left flank, our right flank, and it was a good cross to Balassi. And even on a replay, I don't quite know how Borna didn't score an own goal with his block.
No.
Even the third time, you're like, it's just going to drop inside the post, isn't it? Because it was just lolloping in that direction. But thankfully it didn't. It then resulted in a corner, and they had a really decent effort from there. Was it McNair that hit the shot from that corner? This was Westwood's.
That was McNair.
Top
yes,
save.
That was a brilliant save from Westwood. I must doff my cap in that situation.
It's just curling into. It just looked like it was curling into the top corner, the far corner.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really very, very decent hit, and one of those Westwood, rolling back the years and kind of saving it behind him. Almost you think it's gone past him, and he manages to get a flick on it. Really, yeah, tremendous save. And then we once again managed to battle our way back into a game. So we've said that we've not looked like getting points after going behind, but we have twice now got an equaliser after going behind, and in fairly short order. So this was Green managed to isolate McNair on the right-hand side of their box, beat him very, very easily. McNair didn't really put a challenge in, beat the next defender, and then it was a third man in the middle. Would it be Bowler who gave away the penalty? I think it was. He did that classic. He stuck his foot out. Everybody saw him stick his foot out. Green went over, and he sort of yanked it back really quickly and put his hands in the air. But there was the ref gave it. Everybody saw it, the foul being committed. It was a bit soft. It was kind of like encouraged contact, if you want to be generous. But there was no real hesitation from the referee in giving it, and there was no protests from Boro. They knew they were sort of bang to rights. Obviously, having missed a pivotal penalty that we we had last weekend, you wonder who's going to take our penalties. It was Windass that stood up, and it was very similar to Bannon's, but just hit with a bit more conviction, because the keeper went the right way, but it was hit hard enough. It was a solid enough hit that it was in before the keeper sort of was able to get down there. What do you think it says about Bannon that Windass was given the opportunity to take it? Do you think it's a good thing that he was sort of like, he's acknowledged that maybe somebody's better than him to do it? Or do you think I'm just thinking, like, Rhodes has been so roundly criticised for not taking penalties at key moments for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think that this was quite good, because Bannon sort of knows, I've got too much sort of skin in the game here, and it's too. I'd rather hand it to somebody else who's kind of got a bit more of a striker's mindset. That would be my take on it. But it's just interesting. I think. I mean, we'll see as the remainder of the season goes. But it was such a relief to get that, and a good solid penalty. Then we had this sort of harrowing moment where 42nd minute, where Tom Lees went up for a header. He went in hard for the header. I think both players did. But there was no foul from either side. It was a sort of evenly matched kind of 50-50, but immediately Lees howled as he hit the floor. And it looked like maybe his ankle or his knee went. It looked really bad. They didn't really show it again on the replay, which tends to mean it's pretty nasty. Mm-hmm. And the players looked pretty shook up as well. So I haven't heard. I don't know whether there's anything in the sort of post. He's had an X-ray on his ankle. We don't think there's a fracture, which is pleasing. It's a blow to lose him. There's a chance for somebody else to step in. So maybe that's the season ender for him, but thankfully not. Maybe not as bad as it could have been. Tom Lee's obviously heading towards being a free agent at the end of the season, it looks like. Yeah. And that's, careers can just disappear with injuries like that, particularly at his age. So yeah, hopefully it's not as bad as it looked. It looked pretty awful. But that meant Urigide came on after he was stretchered off. And I did sort of put a note to sort of say, I wonder what effect that will have on teammates, because you could see, in particular, Reach looked pretty shook up on the sidelines. And, sometimes it can be we'll do it for Tom Lee's sort of thing. And sometimes it can be, I don't want to go in for another tackle because look what can happen to you. It can
right.
go either way.
And the overall collective, I can't believe this stuff again, basically.
Yeah, with that too. Urigide looked bright from the off. He sort of 48th minute, once we got back into play, he was straight into the action with a great sort of interception / sort of pinching the ball off a Middlesbrough man on the halfway line, and worked forward a bit, played it into Patterson, who didn't do the best job with it, but then Urigide sort of challenged the centre back for the ball, and it broke to Reach, who just put his head down and smashed it goalward. And that in itself produced a great save from Armchair. That was a very strong hand he had to. That
was a brilliant one-handed stop from him. Yeah, so many times that's going to go in, basically, just at that pace, at that angle. How well
he got a hold of it, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Would you say that he knocked the cover off it, Reg?
He absolutely knocked the bloody cover off it. Any other sort of bits and pieces from the first half?
No, I'm glad you covered that. You confused me for a second when you said 48th minute, because I thought that was going into the second half, of which are the actual regular 48 minutes.
Yes, sorry, yes. Yeah. 45 plus 3, I guess, technically.
Yeah, there was a moment I think you maybe missed at the beginning. I don't know if you saw this or you didn't. At the 12th minute mark, there was a brilliant kind of spring forward, and we got the ball to Green, and he kind of did what I've been doing in my Pro Evolution Soccer career mode right now, which is basically you think you have so much pace, you're just gonna run rings around the opposition defense to the point where you just give away the ball. And that was basically what Andre Green did. He just lolled around with the ball and then was dispossessed. And it was a really, really good moment, kind of, going forward. We feel like a bit of momentum there. I said Giddings can't talk today. It's like a robot doing jazz. I thought by and large it was a pretty tedious game of football. I don't know what to kind of think about that game of football prior to. I think we became a lot more kind of alert and alive, and it became a lot more end to end after Burner made the clanger for us to concede first.
Yeah, there was a lot of there was a lot of nervous energy from the team. I think you could really sense several players are feeling the weight of this situation, and I wonder if there's a little part of you is like, once you've made the howler and been punished for it, it's almost like the worst things happened. So maybe that eases the pressure in a strange way. I don't know. Nobody wants to be the one that makes the mistake, and then when somebody else has done it, maybe, hey, at least I'm not doing as bad as Burner. I don't know.
I know. I mean, we know what needs to happen. We need the players to play with a sense of belief and a sense of, purpose and creativity. We need those. We need performances like we did against Cardiff, right? We need the shackles to be taken off, and then, we go and take these old mercurial Rolls Royces for a spin for the weekend, Rich. That's what we need to do.
Was it Mary? Took the shackles off my feet so I could dance. Just popped into my head when you were talking about shackles off. So we just the flip side of that is if you go and get that early goal, we tend to relax and play a lot better for the rest of the half. I think what happened. Well, I can maybe save this for. I'll save it for the end. But I think that nervous. It's worrying to me that they are so visibly showing the strain of the situation. I've no idea what it's like to. I know players are accused of not caring and whatever and shirking and things like that. But the ones who do, I think there are several players in this team that do care, undoubtedly. Whether they've got the ability or not is another question. Whether they're all well organised enough or not is another question. But I think there's a lot of players care. And at the moment, I think it's been shown in an unhelpful way because caring being shown by being worried and tense and nervous means you do things like Burner did today.
Yeah.
And performances like Cardiff happen because you're playing unencumbered by nerves and you're in that flow state and things like that. It's how good sport happens.
We need them to play some Tetris before they get on the pitch, don't we?
Something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's interesting because I don't know but that seems like there's so much nerves that you're going to make a clanger, which seems so lackadaisical, and so it's like you're not applying yourself, right?
Well, I think we'll have time to do a post-mortem on Burner because guess what, folks?
No, but
he's got another telling mistake to come.
No, but I just want to kind of while we're talking about this in general, you're saying, players do care, and I get that, but it still feels a bit of a kind of knives out whodunit in terms of who cares, really.
Yeah. No, it's. I'm sure you could ask. Yeah, you could do a Family Fortunes-esque survey of which Sheffield Wednesday players care, and you might get very differing answers from different people. But to me, I feel like I'm watching a team that is trying very hard and failing.
But the problem is it comes across that there isn't any application or trying or effort.
Yeah.
Which I get the point. You need to.
So okay, well let's talk about Borna because I think we're likely to. He's going to be villain of the piece. I think
you need to spend midweek getting Liv Tyler to clean off the car like one night at McCool's. Basically, you've got to lavishly and rather sexually, clean off the Rolls Royces to get them ready for the weekend, Rich.
But look at Burner. I think there's a couple of things going on, but to me, I just remember I've seen the Gary Neville has had a lot to say this week about the European Super League. But I quite like when he talks about his experiences, and I tend to feel he's quite open and honest about the game, and particularly his late career. I find it very refreshing the way he talks about it. And basically, he talks about the last 2 or 3 seasons. He knew he didn't have the recovery pace that he used to. And he basically went into every game with the mentality of don't be the one that makes the mistake. And that's not a great place to play football from. It's not a good place to operate from anyway. You know, I think that's a sort of failing, you know, if you're in a failing business and things like that, what you tend to find is there is a culture of cover your backside. It's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. And like, it's all about apportioning blame. But for me, Burner looks like he's in that mindset of, I can't miss out on this. I can't lose the ball here. I can't do, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all because he's never catching anybody again. He's never getting a second bite of the cherry. And the fact, if your whole mindset is, I better not do X, the likelihood of you doing X is increasing
increasingly,
and that's what it feels like with me with Burner. It's like, oh, better not do that. I better not put myself in. And like today with Balassi against him, that's a nightmare, isn't it? Because he's big, he's physical, he's quick. And that is, he will have been thinking, oh, I can't get myself in situations where it's like one-on-one with Balassi. And then, lo and behold, that just seems to happen again and again, and he gets shown up again and again. Mm-hmm. He just looks done to me. And we talked about him being done towards the end of last season, and maybe that was a bit premature. But he just looks ragged, and his races run. I don't know what we do. We don't have another left-sided centre-back.
We don't even have any centre-backs.
No, well, that's true as well.
But again, this is a difficult thing, is we've had continual management say, this is how we want to play. We want to play with 3 centre-backs.
Yeah.
You know, if this is a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-1-2, seems to be something that seems to be liked by continual rotations of management.
Yeah.
It's disappointing, though, because we're redlining those options. We're redlining those options before Tom Lees goes off injured. We're redlining those options before players continually pull clangers. We're redlining those options because we have no great personnel to step in this. I was really worried by the side of seeing Urahide and Burner together. That is not it's a comedy partnership, but it's not a comedy partnership I want to see at this football club, to be honest with you. But we have so few options in this. So, like, the question becomes, we have very few options at fullback. We've got very few options throughout the team in general.
Well, I think the injuries are telling, aren't they? They're racking up.
Injuries are telling, exactly.
We've not cleared any of the long-term injuries from January. None of them have come back, and were just added to the list, haven't we? So just an ever-decreasing list of options.
Like I was asking and saying to you, like, before the podcast started, I was like, well, I don't think we've ever... When was the last time we seen Liam Shaw at centre-back?
Maybe that really good game in the Cup.
Yeah. And then we don't seemingly have, kind of outside of Urahide, any great kind of young options who seem to be kind of coming through, well, with the exception of Shaw that we've just mentioned. But again, there's something there to say that the management doesn't think that's an option. So outside of that, who else have we got? Odubajo's done. He's out for the season. He's done. We're hearing now that I think Iorfa is
back running,
seemingly doing has some kind of running, not even into contact training. So he's very much removed. You know, the decision, I mean, the hilarity that we had the Cardiff game and we got to see Aidan Flint just made to look like an absolute muppet.
Yes.
Really, against Sheffield Wednesday, his former, club who signed him on loan. But the fact that we said, we don't want to extend his loan because it frees up another loan place, and then we didn't do anything with that.
No.
Was absolutely heartbreaking.
There's just continual baffling decisions in terms
There
of.
are. They're incredibly poor decisions. Or that seemed to be like there's nothing said definite in quote, but that seemed to be said by the media. So
Yeah.
that makes me think like I don't want to go and accuse, and I don't believe that in that situation any of the star journalists are liars. I think
No.
they've been told that. I think that's what they've been. That's what they've been informed.
I think so that is one of those decisions though where.
But there's a host of these decisions. There's a host of these decisions come into the season with Kieran Westwood, who you've decided to kick out to the sidelines, who seemingly, for whatever reason, we can't find a way to get him out of the club on a big salary, which kind of happens when you sign players on big salaries and then you ostracize them from the club, and maybe their previous performances haven't been so incredible for a man entering his late 30s. So he's managed to come in, but then you've like, it was a very damning decision. And I want to know, I'd love to know, I'd love to pick Gary Monk's brain on a lot of things. You know, whether that decision laid with Gary Monk or the management at the time, or whether that was just a budgetary thing to say that we can't do this, like we needed another goalkeeper because the options are not good enough.
Well,
It's difficult to say that you've got 3 goalkeepers and that one is someone who has been perceived by numerous managements to be a problem, and at that time and that whatever regime has ostracized him and kicked him out to the side to train on his own with the kids, or with the kids, whatever it is. And then to say, well, we can't afford to get another goalkeeper in because we've got these other 2 goalkeepers, but they're not good enough at this level. Like you need to make these commitments to stay in the Championship. We don't have enough centre-back options in general without the fact that we say, let's play 3 of them.
Yeah.
And then we lose Iorfa. We signed Aidan Flint, but for some, then he picked up an injury and then went back. And then we said, no, we don't want him back for that stupid reason that we just mentioned. So,
but then, just on the Aidan Flint front, nobody knows what the future looks like. So that is a guy who has not played that much football for 2 or 3 years. We played him for 4 games and his body completely broke and he needed surgery. Returning from surgery when you are past your 30th birthday is no given. Returning anywhere near what you've been previously, and so it just could have easily been that we say, do you know what? Yeah, we've got Aidan Flint. We'll have him back, and then he doesn't kick a ball for the rest of the season. I mean, look at Marriott. We kept him on, and we've has he played twice since or something like that?
Probably.
And he's injured again. So it could have just as easily been sat here going, oh, so stupid that we kept Flint when we had the option to say they could have him back and use it for somebody else. The problem is we didn't sign anybody else. It's not. I don't think the Flint decision on its own is a bad one. I don't think it's a pivotal thing that resists surely around 100% around Aidan Flint. And plus, we were told that Flint was, rolling back the years and performing wonders at Cardiff. And the one performance we've seen from him was god awful. And Cardiff have sort of dropped from playoff places. They were 3rd at one point, and they're not even really they're not in the conversation anymore. So I mean, yeah, I know it's not the be all and end all, but it's endemic of a pattern of behaviour that is damaging to us and us alone, really.
But this is the thing, like, if it's not going to be these options, we need more options. We need more players.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's a situation where the owner, where Chansiri's saying this, I can't afford to do this, or I don't want to do this. Like, I think that's the thing that I'm wondering about this is, like, you have to give so much money to this football team to do surgery to improve them. If you don't do it, you lose even more on your... it's...
Well, failure is expensive as well.
Well, this is it. Like, it's expensive doing it right, or it's expensive coasting. It would be expensive to come 20th in this league.
Yeah.
20th, 21st. Basically, whatever we need to do to scrape out of relegation. That's expensive. It's even more expensive to not do it at all. Just the most baffling decisions in terms of recruitment this year. It's just been so awful. But then, I don't know, like at times I felt like with every signing that we made, it felt like it made sense at the time. It felt like it was decent. All of them on paper sounded good.
Yeah.
But the problem is there's so much more surgery needed than what we did. And what we did was a lot of surgery.
The biggest single decision was around the goalkeeping at the club, and whether that was Monk's choice or whether it was forced upon him, that has had... We will go, like, maybe by some miracle we survive. Maybe but probably we go down. And we will go down by not very much over the course of a season. And I think undoubtedly having a decent goalkeeper that we could rely on consistently, that might save a penalty once in a while, that might save a surefire goal once in a while, and talks to his defence and calms them down and stops them dropping deep and all the rest of the things that you expect from a goalkeeper, would have added points.
Yeah, it's 10, 15 points.
We would be better off with a good goalkeeper than we are with the old broken down man who occasionally gives glimmers of his past glory, or two gangly old kids that are not kids anymore and still make mistakes like they are the tiniest of children. They play like 15-year-olds just out of the academy, but they are both 25. It's not funny or cute anymore.
I agree. I think it's damning. It's damning. I don't want to keep saying this like...
No, I know.
Like we're attributing to mentalities around football that are kind of ingrained to us, because there's the weird thing about football that it is changing and is evolving, but also it doesn't really evolve that much.
Yeah.
Still a lot of the kind of classic idioms are still, and I don't think we're outdated by... I really don't think, even though I'm worried that when I say this, I feel like because I'm quoting Brian Clough, like a good goalkeeper gets you 10, 15 points a season.
Yeah.
It's true, and it would have made such a difference.
But yeah, 10 points would be us feeling pretty confident that we'll be all right in the last two games.
And yet the hilarity of all this is like, it's been close. We are close. We are close to surviving. And we look back at this and there's so many missed opportunities, so many basic errors that have been very costly time and time again. There's no individual. It's death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Yeah. Do you know what's a weird thing? Sorry, this has just struck me about Sheffield Wednesday. How often do we go for... So we're going for bargain bucket, so more often than not. We are, we're looking for we're in the yellow stickers, we're not buying fresh off the shelf. Okay. So you generally end up with two options there. A fusty old thing that maybe has a little bit of life left in it.
Yep.
Or a young thing that maybe has the potential to do so much more.
Yep.
And given that decision again and again and again over the history of the club, or at least the recent history of the club, we pick the fusty old apple that we hope isn't rotten inside, even though it does have quite a suspect patch on the outside. And then we bite in and it's full of worms.
I was just going to say there is a cartoon worm coming out with like a Richard Scary hat. And he's just saying,
yeah, but we hope that's the only one. And he's friendly.
It's just me. And then you bite into it and it's like, oh, sorry. I forgot about my four cousins.
It's mealy and tasteless and sends us into a Snow White-esque sleep. But so often when we go for the it's paid off for us. Like we sold Lucas João for good money, and if his career continues in the way it looks like it's going, we'll continue to get paid off for that. We sold Brunt for good money. We sold Antonio for good money. It's weird that even when that other way works for us, we still persistently do go the other direction. Oh, what a football team this is.
Hey everyone, Luke Gravy here, and I'm sorry to interrupt another fascinating and thorough episode on another Sheffield Wednesday capitulation, but I want to plug our amazing sponsors Manscaped. Manscaped are true pioneers in men's below-the-waist grooming,
and their cutting-edge men's grooming technology will make sure you won't have any unfortunate nicks when trimming your nether regions. That's why we're delighted to be associated with the men's grooming revolution caused by Manscaped. They have so many great products, but I'm absolutely made of the Perfect Package 3.0, which contains, amongst the many things, the Lawnmower 3.0. This is skin-safe technology to ensure maximum safety, and it even has a cool blue light so you can see exactly how great the work it does. You can use it in the shower as it's waterproof, and even lasts 90 minutes thanks to the excellent battery. Afterwards, you can use a ball toner and ball deodorants, and they will make sure you're feeling clean and confident. And smell amazing too. I want you to feel the same confidence that I have from using Manscaped products, and how I take that confidence into this podcast, into depicting just how bad Joey Pelopessi is, or having a full-blooded and hearty sigh of my beloved Sheffield Wednesday letting me down again. If you use the special promo code GravyBalls today, then not only you'll be supporting this podcast, but you'll score yourself a sweet 20% off and free shipping. That's www.manscaped.com, and use the promo code GravyBalls today. Manscaped, your balls will thank you.
Should we get through this second half?
Let's do that.
So I tried to do several things to fix my internet issues, and that resulted in me missing probably the first 10 minutes of the second half as well.
No.
So I missed the Windass sitter was then the thing that they talked about a lot.
Yeah. Really great work down the left from Andre Green. He kind of got into a really good situation. Pull the ball back. Windass is there, probably about 12, 15 feet away, in the box from the goal. And just the most kind of lackadaisical foot he put on it to just kind of put it...
Oh, dear.
I love telling you and just hearing your reaction to my words like it's new information. He didn't score it, I'm afraid to tell you.
I can picture it. And that would have been such a great time to score as well early in that second half.
It was like a side foot, but then his angle on the side foot was just so open. It was so terrible. Really, really bad. I must say, I do think that is the worst of the two sitters that we missed in the second half. Dear.
Well, speaking of sitters, the roads, the next thing, there was a little bit of knockabout. So, I mean, if you have notes from minutes 46 to 71, do feel free. But my first thing really is Patterson coming off for Rhodes.
Which minute was that? Do you remember?
71st.
Okay. There was a really good moment on the 58th minute. Just felt like it felt like one of those many things for Sheffield Wednesday. Like you see moments where they're chinking the armour from the opposition defenders. And on the 58th minute, we got a corner from absolutely nowhere from a really awful skewed slice clearance from Grant Hall.
Okay.
Grant Hall, who I look at and think he's a bit of a duffer, isn't he? He's a bit of a roundabout championship duffer.
Yeah.
But maybe very much notes of notes of Darren Pearce I'm getting from this glass of Grant Hall wine. And then that corner, the corner didn't do anything, but it got Windass on the side, and then he basically won as another corner, and then that didn't do much. Yeah, and the 62nd minute, I thought there was a brilliant moment. Reach nearly scintillatingly got into the box. Do you remember that bit? There was a kind of sprung through ball, and it was going to go on.
Oh, yeah, and it looked like the defender had dived in rashly and was going to give a pen away, but actually managed to poke the ball back to the goalkeeper. That was a good moment. I loved how... I thought it was a great ball from Pelupessi. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't Pelopessi. It was Uragide. He looked sort of stuck for options, and then did a little sort of chipped ball over the nearest man into the middle there, and Reach really attacked it and sort of burst through the two defenders. That was a very good nearly
moment. Yeah, I mean, there's still some questions about what he would do if he would get to it and reach it, but it looked so close. Like really scintillatingly there, and that was a really great last-ditch interception from whoever the Boro defender was. Probably Grant Hall, because I've slagged him off. So
probably was Hall, yeah.
Probably was.
You were slagging him off in your mind. You were writing your note about how he was a duffer, and he did that.
The 70th minute, I guess, for the substitution you're going to say for this coming on from Rhodes. I said, is Rhodes the answer? And if Rhodes is the answer, then what is the question?
I put pretty poor outing from Patterson, and then I said, are there any teeny tiny drops of juice left in these tired, sad, desiccated Rhodesberries? He really got zinged by
Yes.
Andy Giddings as he came on. Brian Laws said he really got to pick it up after the last few games, and Andy Giddings was like, last 4 years, more like. Bloody idiot. I enjoyed, that was one of my few moments of enjoying Andy Giddings today. There weren't many. And then we've got another burner mistake.
Another
sort of panicking instead of clearing the ball, and ending up giving away a corner that he didn't need to. And those, I always just feel ominous when those happen. We never punish teams for doing it to us, as exampled by the Hall one previously. But we always seem to get, I know there's confirmation bias in this, but we always, every single time, 100% of the time, get punished when we don't need to give away a set piece, and we do. And that gangly schoolboy that Colin threw on for a laugh was given a free header. Sorry, what was your note? Sorry.
I wanted to say, just 72 minutes, Bernard, this is pretty much just, I did this before we actually got into what happens next. So I said, Bernard spins it wide for a corner. The rest of his team seems to traipse back in disbelief.
It just was so unnecessary. The situation, like, of the percentages of what would happen in that scenario, if the question of sport, what happens next, ending up in a corner is such a low percentage choice. But when Burner's on the ball, you just never know. He always finds a way. Life finds a way, and so does Burner. So disappointing. It was a great header, but it was a free header in the middle of the box.
It was a good header, but I don't know how much you can say. I mean, they did the quick kind of short corner routine, which seemed to work.
Yeah.
Whip it in, which was surprising. But, maybe not more surprising than to Urahidi the concept of challenging for a header, which is something that he doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
Which, I've said this before, if he wants a football career as a defender and he wants to play centre-back, he's going to have to learn to challenge for headers.
That's one of those conundrums where I feel for Urahidi, because I don't know why he's the man marking such a tall player. Like, I don't know.
But that's like every Sheffield Wednesday player.
I guess so. Wow. I just went to see how tall Coburn is on Who Scored, and apparently he is 0 centimetres and he weighs 0 kilograms. So
it's just a gas.
He's just a gas.
He is Will the Wisp.
His ether rose at the far post and the near post, and flicked it into the far post. But he looked massive. I mean, he looked gangly. All he had was his height, but he looked an absolute towering colossus. 6'3" he is. How tall is Urahidi?
Not that tall. 5'5".
Not that tall. Oh.
He looks like the kind of Tom Lee's smallest 6-foot man in the world.
6'2", apparently, according to
you mean he's 6'2"?
Celeb height wiki. He's 6'2", apparently, and there is no higher source than Celeb height wiki, is there?
If he's 6'2", then Napoleon's 6 foot.
Well, he had a complex about it, didn't he? Couldn't stop telling people he was 6 foot tall.
Well, he was just that, he's like the fact that he wasn't 6'1".
But I sort of the thing. I suppose what I'm saying. It's a shame, because I thought Urahidi had a good half generally, or a good performance generally. But yeah, he was just wrestling. He wasn't going up for the ball at all. But what I just wonder what you do in those positions where, well, if he ends up with a straight jump, you can't beat him to the header. So there must be other ways to manage that. But maybe, I don't know, maybe just it didn't have the strength, or I don't know. Or maybe it was just a good enough ball, or that people weren't in positions because of the short corner routine. I don't know. It didn't look good. It did not look good for Agile. So it's compounding. It's an error from Burner produces the set piece, and then an error from Arigide gives them the goal.
I think I'm gonna have to definitely give the blame to Burner, though.
Oh yeah.
There's no need.
You do everything.
Zero need.
Yeah. 76th minute, the other sitter that you alluded to. Mm-hmm. This age-old lie that Jordan Rhodes is good, just starved of service, is proven false once again because Reach's ball was perfect. He put it on his head in the middle of the goal, and Jordan produced a gorgeous, gentle, headed back pass, lovingly delivered back to the goalkeeper's hands. He didn't need to move. Mm-hmm. He just sort of put his hands up, and it just enveloped it naturally because it was so well placed, straight down the middle of his hands. Disappointing. It was another timely, we get a goal then, who knows, momentum shifts, but we ended up conceding the next goal, 82nd minute, and I've put, there's that Westwood that got dropped earlier in the season. Welcome back. I'm not a fan. Westwood involved in a weird sort of pushing match with Watmore, like shoving his head with his glove, and then the ball went over Westwood, so he sort of star jumped at midair underneath the ball. The header gets flicked back over his head, and Watmore, who he'd been wrestling with, just pokes it into the open net. I'm sure there's a cacophony of errors in there, but watching Westwood, it was like, yeah, I remember you just trying to punch it through a crowd of people where you were literally 6 feet away from making any contact with the ball and selling yourself. It just did not look good from a senior pro in goal to be behaving the way that he did.
Yeah.
And a death knell sort of goal to concede. He did produce an okay save in the 85th minute. It was sort of straight at him, but he held it well. It was another free header from another set piece.
Yep. The
defending just went to pieces today. That's it from my notes. Luckily, we live to fight another day because Derby lost. They conceded 2 goals to our previous sort of villain of the piece for many Wednesday games, Justovic or whatever he's called, the ginormous frontman who has beasted us on occasions, did the same to Derby County.
Jukovic.
Yeah, and scored twice to make it 2-1 there for Birmingham. But lucky, completely lucky. This was an abject failure second half to turn up at all, really. Dreadful defending. I thought, that's where I'm sort of talking about the nervous energy. I thought this was kind of like, it was the bottle crashing. We tired ourselves out with all of that sort of frenetic, nervous energy and just looked like we didn't have very much left from quite fairly early on in the second half. There just wasn't any conviction in the way that we were moving. We'd clear a ball into the box fairly well, but then their second and third waves were really easy for them because we just didn't break out of defence with any real conviction or sort of energy behind us. I thought we could have changed Patterson earlier. I thought Patterson had a really bad game today. He just looked error prone and cumbersome all the way through. I suppose the question is, who do you change him for? And obviously the answer then is Rhodes. And is that better? Is a bad Patterson better than a bad Rhodes? I don't know. And I thought Green was done by about the hour mark as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Galling that it's Warnock as the architect and Giddy aiding, salivating throughout in a manner that really made me worry for their recording equipment. But what are your sort of takeaways end of the game?
It's just another entry in disappointment, really. I was kind of hoping that it would, I don't know, maybe I was kind of hoping it'd be done today. It'd be nice to just have like a couple of like games where there's no expectation and then we can just watch those games and just think we can just maybe just enjoy it for a game of football, because there's no oh, Wednesday need to do this. It's like we know what they need to do. I think the players know what they need to do, but it doesn't make it any closer to happening, right?
No, and I think the fragility of the defence. Every team in this league is good enough to put together a bit of play and score a goal. So it almost becomes when they score is almost the most important thing. If they score before us, then they've won. If we get to score a couple before they score, then we might cling on for dear life towards the end. We very rarely keep a clean sheet.
Yep.
But we nearly always score at the moment. So if we can somehow magic up 90 minutes where we don't shoot ourselves squarely in the foot defensively, we have half a chance because we are making chances. Annoyingly, they're all falling to Burner and Palmer, who have no means of taking those chances. But they're happening.
Yeah.
And we'll get the odd... We could end up having another game like Cardiff where it all clicks and we get lots of goals, because we are making that number of chances on a regular basis. And I think that's the only positive to cling to. Everything else is kind of falling apart. Weirdly, Urigide being in the defence, I know there's big questions about him. He does have some pace, and having a bit of recovery pace might not be a bad thing in general with that back three. Because if you're relying on Tom Lees to be the guy that bails everybody out with his stunning recovery pace, that puts you in a bad spot, because he's not particularly wonderful at that. And obviously Hutch is way off. Burner has none. So maybe as a mix, it has a chance to work. But this second half was not a good showing for it, because defensively we were all over the shop.
Yep.
So. Oh, I mean, yeah, we survive by the skin of our teeth. We get another week of nervous energy. The hope that everybody says it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah. Well, I just generally just think there have been so many weeks this season where I feel like I can say that Wednesday are very predominantly a bad football team in this division. But when you kind of analyze it, when we put it on the microscope, as we do here on Different Gravy, chatting to you, Rich, I'm always like, it's not that... there are fine margins between being a degree of competency, between being one of the many mid-table chaff I see, but between positions 14 to 19 within this league. I feel like previously, the disappointment has always been for me... We know at Sheffield Wednesday, we know what they do to us. We know we've seen this one before on many occasions. But I feel like previously I've wanted to say that it's not far off, and that there are these fine margins that, like, if we made some tweaks or we had a few different bits of personnel or a different approach, then it would have made the difference. And I mean, that's the funny thing, is like people have said, I was seeing someone else saying this, like, if we'd replaced Monk with Moore, we'd be safe by now.
Yeah.
If we hadn't had those awful 10 games with Pulis.
And too long with Thompson. That's the other thing. It's the combination. I think Thompson was given too much rope as well.
But it looked like for a while it was good enough under Thompson.
It started okay.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think today is definitely the day that I'm like, I don't think... We don't deserve the opportunity to compete in the last day of the season.
No.
It's been previously glad that there's a thin margin, 4 points. That's doable. And then we're going in to play Derby on the last game of the season, who were atrocious. They're in such atrocious form. They don't score many goals. They haven't conceded quite as many as us, but they've scored lesser goals than us. Their form has been woeful. There probably needs to be like 5 teams relegated from the Championship for being poor.
Well, yeah, because we talked about how bad Huddersfield are as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but it could be
That's
completely immaterial because we've now got this. We've got the crazy thing with Rotherham's games.
Well, that's the thing. It could be we're so fixated on how we compare to Derby, but if Rotherham pull a result or two together in their final four, it doesn't actually. We could finish ahead of Derby and still be relegated.
Yeah, if Rotherham pull their finger out, then it doesn't matter.
And
it'll also be quite funny if Derby are in the League One with us.
Yeah, that would be quite funny.
Mm.
Their games are sort of metered out as well, so they've got one midweek game, so they catch up on one of their games in hand this week, and then they catch up on the other next week. So rather than it, I thought at one point they were doing like 3 games in a week, but that seems to have caught up to the extent where they're now just doing two games a week. But who knows how, if Brentford now finally can't get the automatic places, what sort of effect does that have for them? That's the next game. Who knows? But there are teams, I'm just looking at it, Queen's Park Rangers are 10th with a minus goal difference. It's a really weird league, this. I mean, it's always weird.
I know.
Birmingham got minus 17 and they're in 16th place.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I mean, today is like you have earned yourself the chance. It would be so Wednesday though if it's like, well, that was the last chance saloon, but it wasn't really the last chance saloon. We'll play when it's actually the last chance. It's, just whatever little modicum of space we have, we take up. Yeah, it's been a strange old season, and I wouldn't mind, if today was the day and it was, we're down. What I would like is a bit more clarity about what next season looks like. I would like to look forward to next season one way or the other, regardless of what division we're in, really. I'd like to know that Darren Moore was going to remain our manager, health allowing. I'd like to know, do we have some players to build around? If it's next season, regardless of division, and we've got Bannon, Hunt, Aragide, I don't know, Part. There are players that will probably be like we would expect to be with us in anything like a normal season. We would expect to be with us whether we go up or down, whether we stay up or go down. Palmer cannot be on such a prohibitive wage that we couldn't keep him on. Surely, I don't know. I know we need to slough off a lot of these big earners, and that's great. I mean, almost all of the excesses of the early Chancery era are gone at the end of this season.
I know. Just a question of who remains, right? And who's going to come in.
I mean, really, Bannon will be the only big money guy left.
Depends what type of wage we're given to Traction Mass, or doesn't it, I guess?
Well, that too, I suppose, yeah. Mm-hmm. Has he got another year?
He does.
Goody. Another year on the treatment table.
There we go.
Oh, mate, it's the best. It's absolutely the best. The massages you can get. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, Traction Mass, just having a rub down way as a Tim Tam Slam. Fantastic. How much money are we giving him for that again? Oh, worth every penny. Let's get QPR on the phone.
Just want to thank you again. He is such a lovely patient. So, villain of the piece?
It's got to be Burner, hasn't it?
It's got to be Burner. Once again, unfortunately.
Let's give a brief break to Arahide, who, I think he made some important points. I think he got forward well.
Yeah.
So,
and he could have had an assist. I mean, as you say, that Archer save was top draw from Adam Reach, and easily kind of 50-50, if not favouring the striker more often than not. It was a very good hand he got to it. It was hit with the sort of pace that sometimes you get a hand to it and it still sneaks in. It was that kind of a hit, and Archer managed to keep it out. Any honourable mentions.
I liked Reach today. I thought Reach was pretty good. I thought he was unfortunate not to bag.
He's playing with, whether it's a shop window attitude or it is he's bought in and he cares. He's playing.
Maybe he's the butler.
Yeah.
The butler did it. He cared. He left a little care package for us.
Yes, yeah. But he's putting the effort in, Adam Reach, and I think he's producing quality crosses. He's having decent shots. When him and Windass and Bannon combine, quite often nice things are happening on that flank, and Green added into that today.
Bannon was pretty anonymous today, wasn't
he? It wasn't his best game.
I don't think he was bad by any stretch of the imagination.
No,
but like we didn't. We weren't supping on those Bannon berries, were
we? No. The most persistent bit of imagery in the podcast history. The berries, the juice. The berries. No, I agree. I would go along. I thought Reach played a great part, and I mean, if Rhodes hits it anywhere else, it's a goal. And it was his cross as well, I think, for Palmer's weird karate kick thing that he did as well. We didn't really mention that because it was such a bad shot, but it was a good cross and a good opportunity. That was the one where Brian Laws wanted him to do a diving header. I think if he'd done a diving header, he would have been much better off. You ever seen Liam Palmer do a diving header in your life? If only he'd done a triple back swivel.
If only he'd taken off his mask and we found out it was Lionel Messi all along. You know.
Edison Cavani in the shape of Liam Palmer.
Windass was a bit something as well. I mean, he scored a pen, which was a very second penalty, but yeah, outside of that, I don't know. Disappointing day all round.
What did you think of Green starting?
I thought Green was okay. I thought he had his moments. I think there are still
better than recent.
Won the pen.
Yeah.
May as well start next game, I guess. Who else are you going to play?
Yeah, I could put up with some more of those mazy runs like he won the pen with. I'd see that. I'd watch that a few times.
Yeah. Do you remember when Kadeem Harris was any good?
Oh, vaguely, but it is getting a fainter and fainter image in my mind.
A long time ago.
Yeah. He's such a frustrating guy.
I mean, his first album wasn't Jagged Little Pill, but definitely the second season is supposed infatuated former junkie.
What do they call it? Sophomore slump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet I don't know. Maybe he'll rock up at the Colin Revolution at the Riverside.
Yeah.
As I was saying to my friend Phil over text, I was like, I'm sure Kadeem Harris will join you as Neil Warnock's regular thing of picking up cheap wingers of pace.
Pacey boys. He likes his pacey boys. He likes his big boys up top and his pacey boys around the sides.
So, actually, one kind of, let's leave it on a little frivolous note here. As I was texting Phil, I asked him, have you ever flown from the Teeside International Airport? We were one of the sponsors at half time. So he went to Barcelona to see one of the York peoples, Josephine. He said, it's basically a shed. I said, I enjoyed the bit where it listed locations outside of the British Isles, so I didn't have to be annoyed at the definition of international. And Phil told me that it's famous for having a train station that had 0 passengers one year. It only has one train that stops there on a Tuesday, and you can't actually access the airport from it as they locked the gate.
Oh, excellent.
It was the least used station in the country, though they lost the title as it made it famous, and the nerds flocked.
The nerds.
Which I replied, fucking nerds.
Oh, dear. I mean, sometimes you're just like, hey, geek lad, lol. Oh.
That's me.
That's our Harold. Thanks everybody for coming.
What are we again? Armchair Dullard.
Yes, yeah. Armchair Dullard and illegal elk.
And illegal elk. There we go.
I think you get to be illegal elk by virtue of, being in a country where you may come across an elk, which sadly does leave me as the armchair dullard.
Love it. Love it.
Oh, well, look after yourself, Luke, and folks at home, look after yourselves. And who knows what the situation will be when we talk again. We may still be alive in this never-ending Schrodinger's relegation, or it might be all over bar the shouting.
I hope if we're like that cat, then I hope someone takes us out behind the shed and puts a shovel through our head. But anyway, let's reconvene next week to talk about what happens then.
Yeah. All right. Cheerio.
See you. Bye-bye.